Hey everybody, I decided to do something a little different. You might notice that there's audio but no video. That is because I am doing a podcast version of all this instead of having just a simple video. I'm actually going to just tangent on as a podcast. Just see how I like that. Because I find myself having all these ideas when I get up and walk around. I have a decently long cord on my headset, and I figure I'd just give this a shot, see how this works, and basically go from there. Excuse me. Sound test 1 2. So I wanted to talk briefly about obsessions. I was taking multiple takes on this because I kept going on a tangent about the show, and I need to not do that. But what happens in my head and how my functions work is that when I like something, I will obsess over it. My sister, who's autistic, does the exact same thing, except hers is on a much stronger level. She will constantly obsess over things and truly obsess. I had an older stepsister, no longer my stepsister, that did the exact same thing, except it would get in the way of her life. And she has special needs, so that's understandable, just not autism. For me, it's not that strong, but you can see the pattern. It is indeed there. You can tell that when I like something, I obsess over it. I may like something, but I will not obsess truly over it, and that's pretty uncommon for me. But something that I found really interesting was that my recent obsessions have been non-Japanese related. And if anybody knows me really well, they know I like Japanese stuff. I eat sushi. I like anime. I like video games. I like cosplay. Suddenly, the British world has obsessed me, and I'm not sure why. And it's really only obsession over 2 shows. I'm only obsessed really over 2 concepts, and that's Doctor Who, which I have been obsessed now for about a couple, 2-3 years. I'm actually taking a break from that right now because I recently became obsessed with something else from Britain. Stephen Moffat has written this show. It is a brilliant show, well recommended. And then, as a side note, a couple of my friends who have watched it have noticed behavioral pattern changes. In a good way. They actually felt more intelligent after watching this show, which I felt was really hilarious, because I've done the same thing, but I thought it was just me. So they noticed that occurred, and I was like, oh, that's funny. That's just beautiful. That's just... So whenever I first got introduced to this show, I was able to focus. And that's a hard thing for me. I have ADHD. But not just focus, but organize my thoughts. And here's what I mean. When I have a hard time with my thoughts, I usually have this blank slate, and I think a lot of people understand what I'm talking about, but when you want to retrieve information, your head is constantly calm, and usually just average, where it'll focus only where it needs to be. For a person who has ADHD, that's a problem. It's constantly thinking about whatever it wants and just bouncing around like a little 5-year-old on sugar. Problem is, also, if you have Asperger's like I do, it's hard to portray that energy, but it's also hard to portray the thoughts that go through your head sometimes, at least for me anyway. It's hard to organize those thoughts, because it feels like a plain, blank slate. And when you also have ADHD, my problem is, I go on tangents. So what's this got to do with Sherlock? Well, yes, Sherlock is the new show that I have gotten into, and after watching it, it has given me brilliant ideas, and a visual understanding of a person who goes through a highly extreme version of my case. And understandable, he's a not real character, he's a fictional character, but that doesn't mean really much, especially when he's helped. Sherlock Holmes, I'm reading some of the older stories. I have a collection here from the library. It's a big, thick book. Trying to find the last page, I just saw 11,000. 1,122. Why did I say 11,000? 1,122 pages. It's a 4-novel, 56 adventure collection. He came out with more novels than that, but Sherlock Holmes has become my new obsession, and what it has done for me. I can go ahead and tell you that the show is brilliant. The characters are amazing, especially my favorite villain of all time now, Moriarty, is not only the actor is brilliant for that guy, but he is just an absolute cutie. Summation of Moriarty, he is the playful villain. He is the I will mess you up. He is psychotic. Summation of Watson, he's your typical everyday guy. Nothing ever happens to me, blah blah blah. And then you find out, he's got a friend in Sherlock. And he always comes up with these weird puns. You always hear him throwing a pun every once in a while. And he actually catches on to Sherlock quite quickly, and he's able to help him out a lot in situations, which is actually kind of nice. Or at least he's able to kind of catch on to what he's trying to say, and he can fill in the blanks. Everybody else seems lost. There's a couple of times where that actually happens. Summation of Sherlock, absolutely brilliant character, a brilliant opposite of the same coin to Moriarty, and a lot of people have rumored him to have Asperger's. I quite frankly say no. But that's only because I'm not a doctor, and I cannot prescribe him, or at least describe him as Asperger's, because I'm not a doctor. I can't say that. But I can say, he does hold a lot of the traits, and it does get mentioned in the episode Hounds of Baskerville by Watson that he does indeed have Asperger-like traits. I would be really curious to see an episode where Sherlock walks up to him and goes, "Yeah, I have Asperger's," and then suddenly just throws his arms up and just goes, "What of it?" But the other characters are also brilliant. Molly Lestrade, Irene Adler. I like her. She's just not my forte. Sorry. I really like her. I mean, she's a brilliant actor, and she does the job well. Brilliant. Just not my character type. So it's nothing against the woman who plays her. It's just not my forte. Moving on to the whole obsession thing. After watching the way Sherlock is methodical and the way that Sherlock acts, I tend to imitate those who I admire. So if there was a time, and I still am, okay, I'm going to go ahead and throw this out there. I'm religious, so I do take on characteristics of the person I admire. Take that as you will. But what ends up happening is whenever I obsess over someone, I take on those traits. Minorly, very minorly, but I do. So in this case, I minorly admired. Well, I overly admired. I minorly took his traits. So there are times where I'll talk really fast, and I'll pick up the pace, and I'll explain something in great detail. Whether or not those great details are actually truly details and not just me ranting is a completely different story. Two completely different stories. But I obtained some of those traits and some of those quirks. Whether they're good or bad, though, generally about 99% of the time they're good traits. So I'm not going to try to come off as a jerk. I try my hardest not to. It's just who I am. I have my moments where I don't understand. That's a completely different vent in itself, going into Asperger's and what that is. But I pick up those traits. And with Sherlock, I picked up a lot of those understandings. The more I picked up those traits, the more I understood my own head, and I was able to come up with, instead of that blank slate, I was able to give an illustration to my mind. My mind needed a setting, a place in my head where I would place information, also known as the Mind Palace. Now, I can go on a tangent about the description of a Mind Palace, and that's a separate podcast/video in itself, but basically, the whole concept of a Mind Palace is that it's a memory trick. So long as you remember the route to get back to that spot where you placed that information, you can never forget it. And the way it's described in Hounds of Baskerville, I don't think it describes it well enough. Honestly, I can't remember which episode it is. I think it's actually the first episode where Sherlock and Watson are chasing after a taxi. Yeah, it is the first episode. They're chasing after a taxi, and Watson's like, "Oh, I got the taxi number," and Sherlock's like, "Good for you." And we suddenly see this zoom in into his head, and we see like these plots of roads and where like streetlights are and everything. That's a better summation of a Mind Palace. That is literally what a Mind Palace was, except you would plot information on the street. The way he's described in Hounds of Baskerville is more like word association, where he kind of just looks through all the words of liberty and all of that, all the words of in. And that's where, that's more like word association. And he's like going through all these words. That's not a mind palace. But it's given me a way to kind of plot my thoughts. So through this obsession, I have gained so much as a lesson. It actually has helped me. It's organized my thoughts, and I like that. And in short, I'll go ahead and just say that this show is absolutely beautiful. It is absolutely brilliant. I would highly recommend it. If anybody wants to watch and indulge themselves in a Sherlock Holmes gig, read the old novels, read them. They're hard to read. The vocabulary is a little difficult because, well, it was written in a different time. The word queer is used, but it's in a different terminology and definition. But aside from that, if you read the rewritings of them, you're fine. But to get the true experience, read the original work. It is beautiful. Sherlock is an amazing show. I highly recommend it. I haven't watched the older Sherlock Holmes interpretations, so I couldn't tell you if I really wanted to of Sherlock Holmes in the day, back in the day of the love and trials of black and white television. But anyway, I will go ahead and close this off. Leave me a comment below. What do you think? Do you like this approach? Do you think I should do this approach more often? And how do you think I should go about doing this? I kind of like this idea of using a podcast approach. I'm currently using Audacity, so there's that. I also will put together any audio clips I may insert, as well as a picture using Sony Vegas. So I will talk to you all later. Thank you for listening. If you stood by these whole 12 minutes that I've been chatting with you guys, maybe we'll make it a thing. Who knows? This is Megan. I'm not sure which account I'll put this on. I'll probably put it on the PRS Films account. And I will talk to you all later. Peace out. And just think. I don't know. Don't be stupid. Peace out, guys.